In this video, I'm going to walk you through the #1 best decision you can make for your garden. Now, making compost is an obvious choice, and it definitely helps you become more self-sufficient in the garden. But making compost is not as easy as a lot of people will lead you to believe. I should say making fast compost is not as easy as some would make you believe. Everything eventually composts, but to do compost well, you have to have the right amount of green, the right amount of brown, the right amount of moisture, and the right amount of oxygen. If any one of these is thrown off, the speed at which your waste becomes compost slows dramatically. Now, I'm not saying don't do compost. I'm just saying there's another way. What if there was a free little gizmo that took your garden waste, your kitchen waste, and overnight turned it into an amazing compost as is, or an incredible activator for your compost pile? There is, and this is that gizmo. Now, before you cluck away, hear me out. Chickens help close the circle of organic gardening. And there are 2 ways that you can make that happen. Now, let me know in the comments, have you ever thought about getting chickens? And have you ever thought about them as an addition to your garden rather than just an addition to your plate? Now, if you've ever considered chickens for whatever reason, I did a video last week on Next Level Homestead. I will link that right up here and down in the description. And in that video, I'm going to take you through exactly what you need and nothing that you don't, just the pure basics of bringing chickens into your backyard and taking care of them. I also did a video yesterday on Next Level Homestead about which chicken breed is right for you. I cannot more strongly urge you to consider, if at all possible for your situation, chickens, even a couple. And that video from last week on Next Level Homestead is going to show you how easy it is. If you can have a goldfish, you can care for chickens. And both offer fertilizer, but only one offers breakfast, unless you're really weird. Let me first get out of the way one of the ways you do not want to use chickens in your garden, and that is letting your chickens free range in an active garden. And by active, I mean there's stuff growing in it. Because if you do that, you won't have a garden very long. Chickens will scratch up and pluck out every seedling, small plant. They will jump up and eat every leaf they can reach. Now, if you have an area like this that's full of weeds and maybe poor, hard soil, put a fence around it. Put some chickens in there, and they will have that cleared for you and the soil prepped in no time, and then you can add a garden to that spot. But once the garden is active, they offer an even bigger role. I have all this lettuce that has bolted and gone to seed. Once it gets like this, it's bitter, it's inedible for me and my family, but the chickens love it and will turn it into valuable manure overnight. There are 14 chickens in here, and this pile will be gone in 24 hours or less, probably by the end of the day. Add to that, they will eat and turn into manure things you shouldn't put in your compost pile, like meat, eggs, and dairy. And how about weed seeds? You know, we're all afraid to add weeds that have gone to seed, and I've got tons of them. We're afraid to add that to the compost pile because when compost piles don't heat up enough, and most don't, the weed seeds stay active. And when you spread that beautiful compost out on your garden, those weed seeds are ready to jump into action and germinate. But with chickens, there's good news. You can feed them all of those weed seeds. Back in the 30s, scientists figured out they fed 1,000 seeds to chickens and then examined their manure for the seed viability. And guess what? The chicken's digestive system destroys all of those seeds. So not only can you add all the kitchen waste that can't be put in the compost, like meat, eggs, dairy, but all of those weed seeds that we're afraid to put into the compost as well, they're taking care of it right here. So without chickens, all of those weeds we pull out of our entire property would either have to go to the dump or into the yard waste, and not as good compost to add back to our garden. So once the chickens process all of that yard and kitchen waste into manure, there's 2 ways to use it. Now here in the actual hen house or coop, I'm using the deep litter method, which means they have several inches of pine shavings where they can live and, do their business. And because the chicken poop is heavier than the pine shavings, it kind of gets buried a little deeper. Once it's looking a little messy in here, I put another layer of 2 to 3 inches of wood shavings back on top of it, and they continue to do their thing. And that goes for about a year. And every year, then you would take all of this out, replace it with fresh, and with that old that you took out, there's a couple ways to do it. You can either create a sifter. Now, I haven't done this yet at this property because these chickens have only been in here about 8 months. So in a few months, I'll walk you through that whole process. But basically make a sifter out of some hardware cloth, maybe in a wooden frame, maybe 2 to 3 feet by 2 to 3 feet. And then you can put all of that bedding and manure onto that, give it a shake. All of the manure will sift through and the pine shavings will stay on top. Now, chicken manure is a hot manure, meaning it needs to be aged for 6 months to a year. You can't put it directly on the garden. So age it and then use it like you would any other manure. Dig it into a new place to plant, put it in the hole of a planting that you're doing. The other way to do it is to take all of these pine shavings and the manure and put it all in your compost. And it supercharges your compost. It speeds it up, it gets it hot, because you got a lot of nitrogen in here with that manure. And you've got that's the green part, and then you've got the brown part of the pine shavings. That's my notes. But nothing goes to waste. Even their eggshells, as part of our kitchen waste, go back into the compost, adding that much needed calcium. So now they've got their breakfast and I've got mine. So watch these videos right here on Next Level Homestead and let me know in the comments if I've convinced you. If you learned something, please give the video a thumbs up, share it with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.